Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Byron, and I'm with Byron's Youth Sports. And this is an edit of a presentation that I put on at several different conferences regarding video game addiction methods and techniques. I'm editing this now because for those of us in the children's instructional industry, we are really facing some tough choices and some unique opportunities, and we're going to have to move at least some of what we're offering into a virtual or a digital distribution model. And as we do that, I think it's important for us to analyze how video games and other digital and virtual platforms have incorporated certain psychological techniques, especially with children, to make those platforms more enticing and make the children much more apt and willing to involve themselves and engage with those platforms. I'm going to go over a little bit of the science behind the addiction models, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we can use that same science and those same techniques specifically for virtual classes or whatever else we're offering on our digital platforms. This normally is about an hour-long presentation. I'm going to try to keep it short because with everything going on, I know our times are very limited. So first, I want to talk a little bit about some statistics. There have been two main studies that have reached pretty similar results from all the way back in 2007 and then even again in 2015. And what they found was that between the ages of 3 and 18, on average, children will play 13 hours of video games per week. What that translates to is over 10,816 hours between those two age ranges. And then finally, what that means is they're going to spend almost 451 days, just over 450, playing video games. It's over a year of their life between the ages of 3 and 18. What's interesting is their screen time has only increased, but the amount of time they spend playing video games, according to these studies and several others that we have as well, has not necessarily increased, which is interesting. It does tell us that screen time is permeating their lives in much different ways, but video games, at least to their part, don't seem to be growing in that proportion. So how can we utilize these same techniques? If something is so effective at what it's doing that it can literally take up a year of your child's life during that time, which is a huge amount of time, what can we do similarly to have that same? Now, there's three main types of video games. This is important to realize because it'll help guide how we're going to design our virtual resources online. The first is recreational. The object is just to entertain for a finite period of time. From a video game standpoint, you could think of something like Pong or simple games in the arcade. You go in, you play, that's about it. Educational really started to branch out with Leapfrog, was one of the first ones to do it, but now you have ABC Mouse and a whole variety of online platforms that are trying to use these models we're about to talk about right now. First in Math is another one. Prodigy Math is another one. It's where they take the techniques we have and their purpose is to have that education. And the last is occupational. Now, occupational can be either recreational or educational in its sense, but the object is to produce a long-term pattern of desired activity. That pattern is playing. Their goal is to make you play as often and as long as possible. And that's because occupational games are typically subscription-based. You don't pay upfront for the game. Even if you do, most of the income is generated over the monthly subscriptions that you have. So game companies have really shifted to where even if they're creating a recreational game, even if they're creating an educational game, these fun games, these educational games need to become occupational games. And that's how they're able to get kids to spend over a year of their life before 18 playing them. So what exactly are the techniques that are used to create an addicting video game? Um, Really, we don't want our kids to suffer right now. We don't want them to suffer during these stay-at-homes. We want them to beg to do our virtual programs. We want the parents proud and happy because not only do the parents get a break, but the kids are doing something that's worthwhile. So how do we do that? Well, way back in the early 2000s, a gaming company hired a group of Harvard scientists to make a game addicting. And they ended up going to the science that was developed by a scientist named Dr. Skinner. And what he developed was what's called a Skinner box. And if you've ever taken a psychology class, I'm sure you've seen something akin to this, but really it's a cage where he put a mouse inside that cage, and the mouse would press a response lever, and when that lever was pushed, food would be dispensed. Now, the animal learns to press this lever when it's hungry, but pressing the lever is not an instinctive action. There's nothing in the instincts of that rat to go over and press that lever, but it's taught to do so because the food is the driving force and it associates the lever with the food. The main process that you have to kind of get here from this is that you can train even something as simple as a rat to do something that it has no real desire to do on its own if you put it in an environment where that action leads to something that it does want. So we need to remember our definition of occupational games. The object is to use human interaction to produce a long-term pattern of activity desired from the players. That long-term activity is playing the game. And in our instance, it's pressing the lever. Pressing the lever is the video game. It's the things that they have. And by creating this digital Skinner box, game designers, they're able to get us to do things we wouldn't normally want to do. But why would they design it that way? Well, as usually is the case, money. So a game used to say cost 50 bucks, and you'd get a game called Pong, and it was 50 bucks, and they wanted it to be entertaining and fun only as much as when Pong 2 came out, you'd buy Pong 2. But the video game industry really beat Netflix and beat Amazon Prime to realizing that instead of just getting $50 once for someone to buy the game, what we'd rather have them do is buy the game, but then to continue playing the game over time, they would need to keep paying 15 bucks each month. So how can we make them pay 15 bucks each month and get them to play that game for several months or years even with that subscription model? Now, repetition is key because from a video game design standpoint, you can't have it with infinite activities. And what I mean by that is there's no way to actually create 1,000 levels of a video game. You just don't have the time or the resources. So what they've done is they've changed the mechanics. So instead of doing new activities, they do the same actions over and over again, even if they didn't find them fun, or even if they didn't naturally have the desire to do those actions over and over and over again. And this goes right back to the Skinner box. There's nothing driving the rat to actually push that lever, but it'll push it 1,000 times because the one purpose at the end is what it wants. So video game designers created one level that a player will be willing to do 1,000 times. And the way that they do that is through the reward system that they have set up. So we know that the game levels or the tasks or the challenges or the things that you do within the game itself are the lever from the Skinner box. And they want you to keep pressing it. So, well, how do they do that? There's no food. So what do players instinctively desire? So they had to create virtual food pellets. And those virtual food pellets were rewards, trophies, items, and as we'll learn a little bit later, recognition. And it sounds crazy, but we have to accept this as a fact. And that's the rewards we find in a video game or in a virtual or digital sense are real and they have value. And the way to think about it is this rock right here is just an element, but because it's shiny, we've assigned a value to it and we associate it with value. Now, this special armor from the video game is shiny, but it also protects you from video game ninja bunnies. It has even more value to some things. And so the worst thing you can do is dismiss the value of these pellets or these goals, these trophies, and this recognition that people get through video games or really any digital media that they have. So say that someone presses the lever. Now what? Well, they're going to make more money if you press the lever or play their game often and for a long time. So they went back to their scientists and said, okay, we know that you can make a rat press the lever. We know that you can make a kid do a level over and over again or an activity over and over again that they really don't want to do. But how can we get them to do it often, even when they're not normally going to do it? How can we get the rat to press the lever even when it's not hungry, is what they wanted to know. If you've ever been to Vegas and you've seen the amount of money there is in the middle of the desert, you realize that there's something powerful about gambling. Studies into the Skinner box have shown that if every time you press the lever, food drops, the rat will only press the lever when it's hungry. However, if you have food dropped randomly from the lever being pressed, the rat will almost incessantly press the lever. A Skinner box is a form of slot machine. And if we can get the food pellets to drop at random, then we can drive the rats to continually do it even when they're not hungry. And this is where this comes in for these games and these subscriptions. How can we get them to continue playing and doing these things long term? And the whole idea is that your prize or your reward is, quote, just one pull away, or just one press away, or just one level away. And that drives you to continue and do just one more because the next time might be the time. So, why do we even start doing that? Why do we even put ourselves in a position where we have to worry about a Skinner box and what's going on? Well, if it really is random, how are the kids not getting bored with these video games before their first random one? And this again has a background in the psychology of what they're doing, and it's called shaping. So, shaping has two main elements. The first is easing you in. What that means is the first pellets, the rewards, come fast. So, more frequently, if you will. And then the distance between them is slower as you progress. The taste of that instant gratification early on fuels the delayed gratification later on. And then the second is by reducing stopping points. So there's long distances between saves, or there's short and easy levels like M&Ms. It's the same that you'd see on a slot machine. It's just a quick and easy pull, quick and easy pull. It's just one more, it's just one more nickel, it's just one more quarter, quick and easy. And it drives the people to say that the cost or the risk of just one more is justified by the possible, albeit remote, reward that might come. Now, from a psychological standpoint, games fill a void that's deeper than all of this because ultimately, while the rewards are important, they really dig down deep into a psychological element. And a question that we have to ask ourselves at this point is, why do we coach? Why are you a gymnastics coach? Why are you a swim instructor? Why are you a ninja or cheer coach? And for most of us, it's not because you want to win gold medals. It's because you want to help grow kids and engage with them on a social level to help them grow into the adults that we want them to be. And so for most of us, gymnastics is actually more of a tool or an avenue to another goal. And so if that's the case, what is the other goal? What is the product we're actually trying to get to? What is it we actually are selling to our athletes and our parents, if not explicitly positioning for a cartwheel? One thing that is part of every person's adolescence is that feeling of nobody gets me. It's kind of a tired trope in Hollywood, but essentially, kids feel disenfranchised from society, friends, and parents. And ultimately, video games give them their self esteem, they give them a sense of belonging, and they give them a self actualization that is so critical to all of our mental well being. And a lot of these kids, honestly, are not able to get this sense in the real world that seems unfair. That's where we tell them what to do, where to go, what school they're going to attend. Some kids don't even get to choose what activities they do outside of school. And so video games become that release for them. Now, Malcolm Gladwell, who's a famous scientist, came up with three things that we need to have self actualization, to really be content in life. And the first is autonomy. We want to have some say in what we do every single day. The next is purpose. We want to know that it's not a mindless grind, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel of the choices that we're allowed to make. And then the third is that there's a connection between the effort we put in and the reward that we get. We want to be able to see and take credit for the results of our hard work. So in video games, one of the newest trends in them is what's called role-playing games, where you can pick your character and you really get to kind of pick and choose everything about them. You can pick exactly how you look, what your talents are, who your friends are, your jobs, your rewards, everything. And for so many kids who struggle with feeling like they don't fit in or no one understands them or that they wish they could change things about themselves or that the world around them isn't fair, this is so huge for them. So, how can we make our kids feel in control of our virtual elements? As you're starting to think about this, and as we go through the remainder of this presentation, keep asking, how can I make my kids' environment or my athletes' time in our virtual and digital resources? How can I make them feel like they have autonomy? Even if it's in something as simple as an avatar, even if it's something as simple as what they get to choose or what they get to play or what they get to work on or any of those aspects. How are you giving them autonomy? Are you making them run a race that you've completely designed? Or are you presenting them with choices of some kind? You have to give them choices of some kind. Even if it's just in the rewards, they need choices. Purpose. Remember shaping? There are many steps to achieve an end goal, but a purpose has to be given to each step. And you know the rewards that you're earning. You have to know about the food pellets. If the rat never learned that food dropped, he would never associate it with pushing the lever. If you've ever trained a dog, if the dog doesn't know that there's treats, he's not going to be as apt to follow the training. They need the praise. They need the treats. They need something to encourage them to do what is not instinctually driven. We also want to make sure that we quantify progress. This is something that video games do very, very well, in that they don't just say you need to finish collecting chickens, they keep track of each time. So each step is quantified, and kids feel progress. It's very important to do that with kids who can seem overwhelmed, especially when they're in a virtual environment, because you're not there to encourage them in person. How are we quantifying their progress? If I have 5 videos that I need my kids to go through, or if I want them to go through 5 videos, if I can quantify that progress for them, if they know that they need to be working on 10 minutes of something, if I can quantify that in tiny little bites, that's going to keep them encouraged and not feel overwhelmed by what they're going into. And finally, connecting effort to reward. In one game, when you level up, there's a golden plume of light that shoots out of your body. And when that happens, you're playing in a game space where there's tons of other players who can see your character and hear your character. And so immediately, there's a giant beam of light and a noise that says, "Congratulations to so and so, they just leveled up." And can you imagine if in the gym, when your kid finally gets their kip, if all of a sudden a giant golden plume of energy and light erupted from their body and all their friends got a message that Katie just got her kit, it would be such a huge, huge reward for them that's so important. And it's not necessarily even about the instant gratification, it's about the sense of accomplishment. It's about making the reward seem weighty and purposeful. And the harder you work, the greater the accomplishment is. Video games don't just give you anything that you want at any time. A lot of games have cheats, and while some people use them, they don't find the games as enjoyable as those who actually have to work for it. But that's just how our brains are wired. And the rewards themselves have to be tangible. They have to be something that they can see, that they can feel. It can't just be a sense of accomplishment and the internal sense. You have to have something tangible to help trigger the sense of accomplishment. So, what does this all mean? Well, as we look at it for our kids, they are in a very uncertain time. And in the best of circumstances, most kids crave a Skinner box because it gives them a system that feels understandable, that feels like there's a cause and effect, that feels like they have choice, that feels like there's a purpose to what they're doing, when the world seems the opposite of that sometimes. And with COVID-19, I can only imagine how lost and out of control and lacking purpose our kids feel. This is so much more pertinent to them right now. And what we have to realize is that it is our job as parents, educators, coaches to make sure that the alternatives to video games that we're presenting our kids right now can fill that void. How are we helping their mental and emotional and social well being? How are we giving them self actualization? Are we giving them autonomy? Are we giving them purpose? Are we connecting their effort that they're doing for us with rewards? And if we can do that, then the children will find that just as satisfying, and we're going to make sure that we take care of them as best we can during this time. So to understand how we do that, let's go back to those three things that we have: autonomy, purpose, connection between effort and reward. So I'm going to start with the second one, purpose. One, because it's a little bit easier to dive into, and two, because autonomy is the biggest one, and we're going to cover that right at the very end. Have you ever told your athletes, especially your rec kids or your kindergarten kids, to go stretch themselves? How'd that go? Probably didn't go too well. Even if they don't avoid doing it, even if they don't moan and groan about, oh, I don't want to go do it, they're going to rush it. They're not going to have good form. They're going to be lazy. They're going to be picking their toes instead of doing their splits. And so having kids go through something when they don't see a point to it is excruciating for all parties involved. And so whether it's in the gym when we're having our kids do things that they necessarily don't want to do, or whether it's actually online and we are then trying to get the kids to do these same stretches at home without us even there, are we giving them purpose? If kids don't see a point, if there's not a reward of some kind, there's no reason for them to do it. Okay, there's no reason for them to stretch. And you can say, hey, if you stretch, you're going to get your splits. And that has its own reward. But that is a reward that they feel like is a long way off. And the reason why that's not good enough for kids, or at least for most kids, is because they can't see the instant gratification of it. We need to give rewards that they can get and actually feel like they're achieving. And they need to do things to earn those, but they need to know those rewards exist. And kids will do things that they don't like if they know that there's a reward that they do like. It's okay to give them a challenge. You don't want to make it easy, but you have to make sure that you are giving them prizes and rewards. Like I said, taking a kid who's never done gymnastics and telling them to stretch, because if they stretch, they'll get a split, is not going to motivate that child, at least not most kids. And so we have to break things down. We have to make sure that we give them lots of little purposes. We have to set lots of easily achievable goals. That might be something as simple as we're simply going to hold our split for 15 seconds and then we get this. But we still need to give them something. And this is going to give them the satisfaction that they want without making them wait so long to actually have their stretching come to fruition. Look at it this way. If we ask our kids to do 100 push-ups as part of conditioning, they might not even start because it seems like too many. So one of the things that I do for a lot of my classes is I say by the end of class, we're going to do 100 push-ups. And what we do is we do 10 push-ups 10 times. And each of those little tiny 10 push-ups 10 times is so much more manageable and so much easier for the kids to get into. And what we do is we have random rewards at the completion of each of those 10. At the end of each of those 10, we can roll a dice and we can see who can be the line leader to the next station. Or we can randomly have the kids pick from the treasure chest upon the completion of all 100. And this isn't the only strategy. A lot of times what you can do is we can say, look, we want to get you to the point where you can do, say, 40 or 50 push-ups in a row. But we're not going to just have that be your level one. Your level one is going to be, we're going to get you to do 10 push-ups in a row. And then your level two is going to be, we're going to get you to do 20 push-ups in a row. And then your level three is going to be, we're going to get you to do 30 push-ups in a row. And this is all part of making sure that the kids feel engaged, that they don't feel helpless, that they don't feel like the goal is too much for them. And so when you look at this from a standpoint of when I'm designing my virtual classes, when I'm creating content for these kids to digest, I need to approach it from two different ways. Either I need to break it down into easily digestible, quick 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 by 10, or I need to build up to where I want them to be over time. And I need to make sure that I'm giving them small, medium, large, ever-growing rewards along the way as they reach those milestones. Now, this doesn't mean you have to have a reward for everything. Remember, the rewards are actually more effective when they're random or gradually harder to achieve. This all goes back to the Skinner box. If they know every time they press the lever there's a reward, they're only going to press the lever when they want a reward. We want them to be doing what they don't enjoy as much as they can. And again, what they don't enjoy as good things, such as stretching and conditioning, or doing our online classes, or any of those things. So we have to present rewards that they want, that are easily attainable at first and harder to achieve later, and random. If we don't give kids credit or rewards for their accomplishments, especially at the beginning, they were going to lose interest and they're going to give up. So we're finally going to wrap up with autonomy because that is the biggest factor. Quick little tidbit on the psychology of autonomy in teens. If we limit how much adolescents are able to control in their lives, psychologically, it's directly going to lead to high rates of externalizing behaviors such as delinquency, drugs, alcohol use, and it also leads to high rates of internalizing negative behaviors, including depression, anxiety, poor self-confidence, and actually has been a direct link to suicide. So this is a big deal. But what's interesting, Steve Meyer at the University of Boulder found that the degree of control that an organism exerts over something determines whether or not the stressor alters the organism's functioning. And that's a lot of mumbo jumbo to essentially say that if a child feels like they are under uncontrollable stress, stress that they can't control, that can have damaging long-term lifetime effects on that child. But if the child feels that they can control the stress, that they are in control, they have autonomy over it, it is much less destructive and significantly so. This makes me think of COVID-19, like my alarm bells are going off right now with what this is doing to our kids psychologically. And how can we make sure that we are helping them feel in control of the stress, in control of the social distancing, in control of their physical health, their mental health, all of those aspects. Now, one really important thing, we can't give kids full autonomy. Of course we can't. They're kids. And even if they weren't kids, they're humans. But video games don't give them full autonomy either. And this is something that's so critical that a lot of caregivers and parents and coaches get wrong. You don't have to let the kids be completely in charge. You can be in charge and you should be in charge. You just have to give them the illusion of autonomy, which is something that's completely different. What video games do is they create a space where you think you can do whatever you want. But in reality, they created the space. They built the sandbox. They chose the sand, the amount, the tools you have, the size of the sandbox, the location of the sandbox, how long you're allowed to be in the sandbox. They chose all of those aspects. And yes, while you can use all of those tools or toys to build whatever you'd like, ultimately, they've essentially decided you're going to build a sandcastle. And you think you're in control, but they made that choice for you. That's what they go to make sure that while giving a sense of autonomy, they don't have to give the player unlimited choices. They give you very limited choices, but they still make you feel like you're choosing. Here's another way to look at it. If I had to ask you to go from point A to point B, I could give you very, very specific directions. Or I could just ask you to go from point A to point B. If someone gives you directions, your first instinct, most likely, is to probably look at them, but you're going to have an inkling in your back of your head that you want to be able to figure out directions and make sure that it's the fastest way. Let me give you another example. Have you ever walked up to someone while they're trying to get into a room, for example, and they say, "The door's locked, I can't get in"? What's your first instinct? You want to check the door handle. It's amazing. Without fail, we always do that because we want to feel like we're in control, like we have a choice over it. We don't want to feel like someone else is controlling access to whatever we want to get to or anything like that. Same with an elevator button. The elevator button, it even lights up to tell you it's been pushed, and we still push it because we want to feel like we're in control. So how do we build the sandbox? Well, First of all, the best rewards are not immediately available. We have to get to them using small steps and small rewards at the beginning. We have to earn the right to the best stuff. And as we progress, the sandbox, our choices, our options, they're going to continually get bigger. And so do the rewards. So maybe we start off with only a few different levels, a few different skills, a few different things that we need to do. And then as we complete those and show that we have the ability to do so well, we're rewarded not just with prizes, we're rewarded with more choices. Autonomy itself can be a reward. So think about it this way. When someone jumps into your digital platform, when they get to the space where you have all of your resources, are they going to have so many choices that they're going to be overwhelmed? Because that can happen. I call it the Netflix phenomenon. It's you sit down with Netflix and you have more entertainment in front of you than you could watch in your entire lifetime. And you spend 20 minutes scrolling through it because you have so many choices you don't know exactly even where to begin. And we can't do that with our virtual platforms. We have to make sure that we don't overload them. And the choices and the drills and the videos and everything that we give, we can absolutely give those. But the autonomy and the choice of those is something that they should earn. And that's one of the most difficult things for us to realize and to really accept is maybe when someone logs in, until they complete these 5 activities, they can't unlock the next 5. But if we do that, we create autonomy as a reward, and that is extremely powerful with kids especially. So we start small, we create the sandbox to our satisfaction, and we make sure that the future rewards are made known. We have to dangle the carrot in front of them to make sure that they have the drive to start pushing that lever and to start doing the things that we have in front of them, whether that be the drills, the conditioning classes, anything like that. And as the athlete shows responsibility and autonomy, we can grow that sandbox and upgrade their tasks accordingly. We can change what they have access to. We can change their choice of rewards, whatever we want to do. Think of it as a buffet, right? We're going to set the menu. We're going to let them eat what they want first, but they can't move on until they finish everything on their plate. They can't go back for seconds until they finish this on their plate. They can't get dessert until they finish this on their plate. We give them the illusion of autonomy, but ultimately we've set up the entire environment in which they are operating. So, how do we make our virtual classes addicting? One, we have to give them a choice. It could be in their challenges, the rewards, the order that they do the classes and drills, anything. We just have to give them a choice. They need to feel like they are in control in some way. That could be in something as simple as letting them choose what their login looks like, what their page looks like. People love Facebook for a reason. They can pretty much contour exactly what their life looks like when it's presented to other people. But how can we do that with our virtual classes or our virtual platforms? Because ultimately, we need to view this not as just virtual classes online. We are creating virtual platforms to engage with our athletes and their parents. And that whole platform needs to be designed around these aspects. 2, we need to demonstrate and quantify progress. At our gym, we have progress charts. We're doing the challenge chart where as kids go through, they end up getting prizes at each level. And it's really been successful for us. We're using the model where each level is hard to level up. So once they complete red, they get the certificate. Once they complete blue, which is twice as hard as red, they get a big winner's ribbon. And once they complete green, which is 3 times as hard as red, then they're getting all of a sudden a trophy. We're building up to all of those different aspects for these kids as they go through these levels. And the other thing we're doing too is we're sharing all this on social media. We're making it public and we're having rankings posted online. We're going to make sure that everyone can see and acknowledge and support each other as this. Because the public recognition of progress is just as important as the public recognition of completion. And we need to remember that as we're doing these platforms. If we have kids going through, we need to not just offer them a product, we need to give them recognition for completing and utilizing that product. And I cannot stress that enough. If you're creating a digital product for kids and you want the kids to be engaged, you can't just expect them to complete it and move on. You have to reward them for using your product. And how you reward them for using that product is up to you, but there has to be some sort of reward. Set easily achievable goals. We're going to break down their tasks, their challenges, their drills, their videos, their classes, whatever it is, into easily completable challenges. We can have some longer ones, and those longer ones might be worth more. Maybe for every minute of video that you watch and complete online, you get a point. And when you've reached a certain number of minutes in a video or minutes watched, you get a reward. But whatever it is, you need to give them something that's easily digestible, that's easy and quick for them to go, just one more, just one more, just one more. It's the same thing with Netflix. No one ever sits down with Netflix late at night and goes, I'm going to watch this show for the next 8 hours. But lo and behold, how many people sit down and watch just one more episode, and all of a sudden it's 5 a.m. and you realize that you're not 18 anymore and you feel horrible for the rest of the next 2 weeks. But we've all done it because we believe and buy into the just one more slot machine effect. We need to set small rewards for meeting those goals. So we can't just give one big reward of completion. We can't just say, you'll feel better if you do it. We can't just say, because I said so. We have to give them shaping. We have to give them a reason to go through what they're doing. And we need to enact the Vegas factor. We need to make sure that as we go through this, we throw in a bonus reward. And what I mean by this is they might know that, hey, once I complete 5 videos, I get to spin a wheel. And when I spin that wheel, it's going to possibly land on this amazing reward. But 99 times out of 100, it's going to land on small, tiny rewards. But as long as they have that chance of maybe this will be the time, they will keep biting off those 1 to 3 minute videos, those simple tasks, those do 15 push-ups, those whatever it is, because those simple tasks give them another spin, another chance to win that. Give tasks a value. They need to know the purpose behind what they're doing. And so that can be both in the purpose of, hey, if you do these stretches, you'll become more flexible. That's absolutely a purpose. But also they need to know what the rewards are going to be. You need to tell them, hey, if you do this, you can have a chance at this, or you will get this. And if they do that long enough, anyone that has actually gotten into a workout routine or gotten into a diet or gotten into anything that takes time to overcome your natural instincts, over time, that action will become its own dopamine releaser, which plays into what was really studied with Pavlov's dog and the salivation upon hearing the bell and things like that. But that takes time. And so we need to make sure that there's other value to keep us engaged and not be the people who start working out in January but are gone from the gym by February because they didn't have those goals they could achieve. Make the rewards possible and instant. So when they're in your virtual and digital platform, is there a way for them to see their progress? Are you keeping track of, hey, this is how many videos you've watched. Hey, this is how many points you've earned. Hey, this is how many prizes you've already gotten. Hey, this is where your friends are. Your friends can see where you are. We can't wait until the end of this and the kids return to the gym to get them rewards. They need them now. And we need to make sure that we give them that beam of light. What I mean is we need them to be over the top and grandiose. You can start with them often. It doesn't mean they all have to be that way. Like, so for our challenge chart that we're doing at Byron's, the ultimate end goal, if they complete all of the levels and go all the way up to the gold level, is they get their name on a big banner that we're printing that we're going to hang in the gym of all the people that completed the Byron's Challenge Chart 2020. And even my own kids, literally, I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they're here at home every single day doing these small little tiny challenges, 15 push-ups here, 30 seconds of splits here, 15 sit-ups here, because they realize, one, they're going to get those rewards at each level, but 2, they won't stop talking about their name's going to be on the wall at the gym and everyone's going to see it. And they have bought into that wholeheartedly. So I hope this has helped you guys as you look at your virtual platforms and at your digital offerings, because this can't simply be we're kind of like YouTube, we're just releasing these videos. We have to make it to where there is a connection between effort and reward. We have to have a purpose behind what we're doing. We have to give them autonomy and all these aspects for self-actualization, because that's what's going to make your digital platform, your virtual resources that you're offering, that is what will make them addicting to these kids. And that's ultimately what we want. We don't want them sitting down playing a game on their iPad. We want them being active and learning and engaging and working with our coaches and working with our staff. And ultimately too, I hope you can take some of these techniques and apply them to what you're doing in your classes. Because if you can, it'll make your classes addicting. It'll make your kids want to come in and want to stretch and want to do conditioning because of all of these things that we are addressing and engaging for them. So thank you guys again. If you have any other questions or anything else that I can help you with, I'm happy to speak with you directly. You can email me, patrick@byrons.net. That's PATRICK at BIRONS.net. You guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys on the other side.